Hey guys, Rhino here, and today we are christening this new channel with a video that's kind of how the old one started, which was talking to Gleeman. Now, full transparency, as always, Gleeman is a friend of mine, and we also have a podcast together, present company included. Feel free to check that out. But I felt it was a really good way to start off the channel, going back to its roots, and just seeing what Gleeman had to say. And today he's going to be talking about storytelling in the AI community. So let's see what he's got to say on the subject.
Hello there. Welcome to my channel. My name's gleeman. If you're returning, welcome back. I'm currently trying to do a breakdown of one of the new videos in the Skybros pod or whatever you want to call it, sphere.
For anyone who sees this that's not part of our community, the pod is a fairly large group of creators on Discord who make AI music and videos, and many of them are VTubers in the Twitch VTubing space and some on Rumble.
I say that I'm trying because I cannot focus on this task while there is an itch I need to scratch. That itch is for a story. This will be a small vent from me to express my view of what AI can do and what I'd like to see from AI creators.
So Gleeman, as much as we like to pick and poke at him because we are friends, he is extremely knowledgeable when it comes to storytelling, especially the classics and the hero's journey sort of cycle. So he is highly qualified to speak on this, and he is also an AI creator. So he is a really good person to bridge that gap between those two things.
There's something of a gap in this corner of the AI space. That gap is one of actual narratives being developed and put forth. I've seen quite a few AI lore videos and even more AI MVs that fit more as cameo videos. While most of these videos capture some theme or another, many of them lack a narrative structure. What do I mean by narrative structure, you may ask? What I mean, at its simplest, is a scene. A character begins the scene, events unfold in the scene involving the character, and the scene ends with either the character changed, or other characters have changed, or the setting has changed.
So he's not entirely wrong here, and Gleeman is very qualified to speak on this. Most people will understand a narrative as anything with a beginning, middle, and end that has a consistent through line. I mean, we might debate that definition, but I think either way, most people would know what we were talking about when we say a story. When he says a narrative where there is a change, either personally or in environment, he could also be speaking of the narrative as a challenge put forth, which is what we would most likely think of as a story. And the challenge doesn't necessarily have to be like a physical confrontation. For example, I was hungry. I went to the fridge. I looked in the fridge. There was nothing there. I closed the door. I was still hungry. There was an action being taken and an inciting incident. The inciting incident was I was hungry, and then there was a resolution. The resolution was I didn't find anything. It doesn't have to be a positive resolution. Just as long as there is an action taken to resolve the problem and an end result, you have a narrative, so to speak. And he is right. Most of the current Sky Bros videos, as much as I love them, there is no narrative through line, myself included. I don't necessarily do a ton of cameo videos where I feature a ton of people, but even myself, I tend to write more towards the feelings I'm going for than the actual story, because I am admittedly not as good at gleeman as writing stories. I'm not as experienced in it. I could certainly try, and it wouldn't hurt any for me to talk to him personally and get a few pointers and have him tell me, where do you think I could go with this? And more people should do that. Be like, hey, I've got a song, I got a video, I have a concept. Where can we take this?
Exposition in the form of visual storytelling or dialogue is used to give context to what the audience is experiencing. Characterization is what defines the character and their actions and reactions. Plot is defined by the ordering of events to get the character from point A to point B.
And he's right there as well. The narrative structure, it doesn't have to be, as he said, it can, and with AI, which is what this community mostly focuses on, it would almost certainly have to be visual storytelling. While you can do conversations with AI, it's a little jank. There's a lot of fighting with it. It doesn't lend itself well to smooth conversations and smooth talks, as well as the visual side of it can be used. And even then, the visual side will fight you. People, they say just generate thing and do it. Shout out Ohio Birdman. But the reality of the situation is that it takes a ton more effort than just say, make picture go. You have to understand what you're going for. You have to have a locked in art style. And then you have to have the technical know how of effectively the higher your production skills and the more technical knowledge in production such as camera angles, different colors, different movement terms. If knowing the difference between an orbit and a pan, while that may seem simple, knowing the one you want at the time, and also knowing whether you should make the camera spin or in an editor keep a still image and spin it manually using editing software makes a huge difference in what you're working with. So there's a lot of technical skill that goes in here. He just wants people to have one more tool in their arsenal of tools, which is a good story to be told along with it. And plenty of people do this. It's just not as many try it as they could.
These are very basic building blocks to create a scene and, in short, a narrative. The audience can follow both a cause and effect chain of events while learning more about the character that is providing them the perspective of the events. Now, I mentioned that I've seen quite a few lore videos, and I would like to clarify the difference between a narrative and lore.
This is actually something that's good to touch on, because most lores will have narratives, but not all narratives are lores, and you can quite possibly have lore that is not a narrative. For example, a gleeman sitting in a chair reading a book, that is not a narrative. There's nothing happening per se. There's not really a story being told there. There is no inciting incident. There is no conflict. There is no resolution. And I'm sure he'd be able to, in his own unique way, pick this apart. But there's not much to bite into story-wise there. It is an excellent scene, right? He's got a lovely setting, and he does actually have quite a good background, as he mentioned in our Overly Sarcastic Productions podcast. The clarity of the setting could use some work, but he does have quite a nice fireside background. But this isn't a story without him getting up and doing something or some kind of problem that he needs to solve.
Lore is something of a nebulous term for history. It's a history of fictional or the actual, merely that which we historically ascribe to a place, person, thing, or an idea. An argument against this might be when someone says that a present event is getting added to the lore. All that person is saying is that whatever is being added is being attached to the history of whoever or whatever the person is talking about.
Um, I'm not going to disagree with him here, but I do think it could be expanded upon a little. And Gleeman loves it when I argue with his definitions, so this one's for you, Gleeman. He's not entirely wrong that lore is a great stand in for history, but I think the real difference between lore and history is what we know to be factually true, but lore does not have that requirement as to the definition. So history, at least as far as we know it, is factually sound to the best of our knowledge. History is his story, but we have ample evidence. Lore can be factual or not. It really depends on who's telling it and who's hearing it. So lore can be a little bit more fast and loose with that. It's borderline mythos, but I think the difference between a mythos and a lore is that with lore, you are unsure as to the factuality of it. With a mythos, you are 100% sure that it is unfactual.
When lore is applied in the form of lore videos, we're mostly talking about a backstory of a character. Backstories can be a form of narratives, but more often are small summaries of a narrative that is expositing to the audience the necessary context of what is going on with the character. Essentially, just letting you, get to know this one character better.
He is correct here. You're going to hear me say that a lot in this. Gleeman is a very intelligent person, and he's far more academic in his use and his thoughts than I am. I'm just a retard on the internet, and he is a humble Gleeman. But the difference between a narrative and a backstory is a narrative will have a full throughput. Your backstory, while it could be a narrative, it generally isn't because it doesn't see itself to completion. Most people have backstories explaining why they are the way they are, how they are. For example, Gleeman, prime example, his backstory is that he is a universe traveling little jelly man that tells and collects stories. But we never see the end of that. So that narrative, or at least the start of a narrative, is never complete. Now, if Gleeman has a story or an arc of a sort where his humble Gleeman that travels the universe telling stories has a conflict and then he decides to retire from being a humble Gleeman telling stories, then you would have a complete narrative because it has a beginning, middle, and end. It has a start, an inciting incident, conflict resolution. And there are probably a ton of other factors that you could put in there that would really expand on that as well as part of the hero's journey, but not all of them are required for a story.
In a very concise manner, but not in a manner of us following the character through a scene. Sometimes that can happen, but more oftentimes it's more a summary of events that lend us that historical information. I have no problem with lore videos of this nature. They are excellent introductions to the world of one or more characters that can later be fleshed out into fuller narratives. The reason all of this is a sticking point for me is that I have heard many a time that the Skybros, Pod, AI groups that we are a part of are going to be the replacement for Hollywood.
I don't inherently agree with the points that he's about to make here for context. But I do think he is right to a point. We will not be a replacement for Hollywood. I'll let him get into it a little bit here, but to expand on where, or not to expand on, but just to solidify my opinion on this, I believe that this is only partially correct.
But what is it that we all want from Hollywood? Good stories, right? Not just the CGI slop that they pump out. Well, if that's the case, then I think quite a few of the creators in this sphere are skewed in their focus. What is the point of creating your dazzling AI MVs that have no story? I hear from creators that they are still learning the technology that will help convey the story, but I'm wondering if they have stories to tell. This is one of the reasons that I myself hold little interest in getting into the video prompting part of AI. I'm much more keen on crafting a story than getting bogged down with writing to gen the right visual for the story that I'm trying to tell.
So I'm not going to push back too hard on here because I do see where he's coming from, but he's thinking as a storyteller, and I believe there's a little bit of bias there. Just built in because he is who he is and he enjoys the storytelling side of it. Whereas some people may not be as heavily invested in the stories themselves. Some people are more interested in the emotional appeal, like a painting. A painting can tell a story, or it can portray an emotion and set a scene. Like, for example, Gleeman's little fireside chat here. There is not a story being told in the visual itself, but it is a scene. And they're not exclusive to each other. But you can, with the generative AI, create a set of scenarios using imagery that can express emotions very intricately and very expressively. Or you could tell a long and thought out story, or a short story. I think it's Mark Twain, the shortest story ever written. Uh, For sale, baby shoes never worn. You don't need anything long and exuberant to write a story, and he's 100% correct here. People need to take the time and figure out what they're looking to say instead of focusing so much on how it looks. But I don't think the two make themselves exclusive of each other. You can do both, and you can do neither. It's really up to the choice of the artist.
Don't get me wrong, there's definitely a need for good AI generators to bring a story to life. I guess my confusion lies in which are which. Who is the creative that is merely about the visuals, and who is the creative trying to tell a story?
And these two people, these two types of people, can coexist. And Gleeman is very aware of that. I'm not saying that this is what he thinks by any means, but I'm just adding to the point. You can have the people who hang out in the AI dungeon, kind of like Hollywood uses the CGI dungeon, and all they do is prompt and manufacture. These types of people do exist. They exist in our community. We know them. They do it for the love of the game. They're not even getting paid to. They'll just sit there and make pretty pictures all day, and they love it. And then you have these storytellers who they want meat on the bone and they want to hear something interesting like gleeman. And gleeman is no hater of AI imagery or art of any kind for that matter. Not that I'm aware of. But when these two types of people get together, that's when you can create something beautiful. That's when you get, even as a short video, because it is AI and we are limited in what we can do with the technology, especially seeing as how relatively new it is, and also by the systems that we have to use it with. These two people can get together, and even in a very short story, they can come up with something quite beautiful. Now, I'm sure you've all been online and on YouTube, and you guys have seen the AI slop romance videos that are coming out of China like crazy right now. The young prince didn't know that he was going to run into the love of his life. And then there she was, and they just like walk into each other, and it's like the most jarring thing in the world. Those people are actually onto something. They just don't know it yet because they are the people in the dungeon manufacturing the pretty pictures. They have that skill. What they don't have is the skill to take those pretty pictures and then tell something interesting with it. So if someone like Gleeman got a hold of someone who had that skill and they worked together, you would very likely come out with something, even as a very short story, maybe 10 minutes, something marvelous would come out of that.
I've already ended up uh, talking about this with several people in our community, and I will be trying to focus my breakdowns on the videos that I think are trying to tell a story. Of course, there are the exceptions, like the some of the bigger creators. That's just good for the channel, but also I do like their works. Skybrows isn't necessarily a storyteller, but in a way he's something of a story reteller. He likes to take stories that we already know and repackage them, which in of itself has its merits. And then you have some of the AI MVs, which are very well made and also have several layers of depth to them in their themes and in, I guess you could call it, their emotional resonance.
And I agree 100%. I don't think Skybrows is currently trying to make the next Odyssey. He's not, you know, Atlas Shrugged, the recreation is not on his agenda, although it could be and we don't know it. Skybrows, I was introduced to Skybrows through Leaflet and Nuxanor, and then following the rabbit hole down until it led me to a video for a song called Redarked, which is not the most uh, engaging storytelling ever, but visually and emotionally, it's extremely powerful. And I think that there's room for both of those types of videos to coexist.
Um, so there's that. I know that the Lyrian Chronicles Challenge has brought forth several story-driven videos, but I'm hoping that the challenge will be used more as a springboard to work on individual stories and not just writing for the Lyrian Chronicles.
I mean, it is a biased contest because it is the Lyrian Chronicles. I get what he's saying. And there is tons of good content that tells a story, whether with or without dialogue. Ohio Birdman had a great video. Null FM had a very interesting one involving a, I want to say it was a Fox girl, not positive. I'll have to check back. And then you had Akno, Keen, I'm going to try and name them all. Lady Wasabi, um, Nightway, and Akno, Keen, Lady Wasabi, Nightway, and there is one more. I am missing someone very important, and I just cannot think of their name. But these 5 individuals, oh, General Gravely, sorry. These 5 people came together, they pulled together their assets, and then they created something amazing. It was a team effort to get a 30-minute anime video. But it was a full episode with intro, with outro. The speech looked quite good. And as much as AI fights you, with this cracked team, and this team was cracked, they were stacked from start to finish. They were able to lock in and tell the story they wanted. It was interesting, it was unique, it had good humor in it. Everyone's personalities kind of shown, and you could tell what characters were what archetypes and what their motivations were inherently. It was excellent.
Some creators that I want to point out who I've seen with lore or story-driven narratives are Depthswalker, Lil Reaper, Occultus Noticia, Crystar, and at least one lore video from Lady Wasabi's Louisverse.
If you're not familiar with them, please take your time and look up each of those individuals. They all do excellent work.
Of these, I think Akno, who is Cultist Noticia, is very close to doing true narrative-based stories with his recent anime short scenes. They aren't the flashiest videos out there, but they have characters interacting with each other, consistent characterization, and the scenes have a through line from beginning, middle, and end.
Now, I don't know if that was true, if this is true, but I am of the opinion, and I'd have to check with him to be sure, but I believe that these small character stories that he was doing, such as the Asmongold Kirsha one, were proofs of concept for things that they were going to try in their 30-minute leaflet video. He had ideas that he wanted to explore on how it could be done to ensure that they could be locked in and there were going to be no hiccups when the time came to make the full product.
Anyway, I think I've aired my thoughts out for this subject long enough. I shall return to my breakdowns and other content after this. I merely wanted you all to know where my interests lie. I've had several requests for breakdowns of videos that don't meet the criteria I've laid out, and I don't wish the creators to think I'm not covering their videos because I think they're bad. Some videos can be very well made and perfectly fit the intent of the creator, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be the intended audience member.
I'm glad he said this because that's an important thing for him to put forward, is that he has a particular thing that he is going after. And just because you are not being shown doesn't mean that there is ill will. It just means that you do not fit the criteria for specifically what they are going for. In the same way that I am doing video reviews on this channel, but I'm not going to show a cooking video. It would have to be quite unique for me to want to cover something of that nature, because while I'm sure there are videos like that that exist, by and large, they're just cooking. There's not a lot for me to bite into and talk about or discuss in any way. So it's only fair to give him the same courtesy and assume no malice when he says, I'm sorry, I'm not going to cover that. It's not personal, it's just he has a set criteria and he's serious about what it is that he's going to lock in.
So, uh, with that, just to reiterate, something that I'm looking for as far as my covering content and trying to break content down, I am seeking stories. That's always been my goal. I even tell my stories in the form of my own lore songs. And with Tales from Manoa, I'm even changing up my own formulas in order to better fit the criteria that I've laid out for you guys.
For those who are unaware or not part of the community who happen to see this, Tales from Manoa is a personal story that Gleeman is telling about a group of gods on a continent called Anoa, and he is tackling this from creation myth to what will be its present day. And this first set of stories are essentially covering the gods who helped create it and are people of import in this mythos.
If you watch the Tales from Manoa, you'll see that the individual tales for the Green Man and for the Mechanist are told as scenes, um, glimpses into the lives of the Amor. So this is me trying to practice what I preach, and I hope to see more story-driven content within the Skybros pod, whatever you want to call it, AI sphere. That being said, if you do have content that you wish to share, my Discord server will be linked in the description, and I hope to see more content published there, which might catch my eye. It's always good to see new content creators and what they can do. Anyway, I will leave you to that and see you in the next one.
That was a great video, and it's everything we expect from Gleeman. Me and Gleeman, we give each other a hard time. We're very different people, but I gotta compliment the guy. He is concise. He's to the point. He uses the proper verbiage every time. His vocabulary is quite impressive, and he uses it to full effect. And he's 100% right in this video. We do need more storytellers, not just in the community, but as a whole, because there are people out there with unique and interesting stories to tell who just aren't taking the time to do it. They're either afraid that people won't like it, they're worried that it would be too much investment. I mean, there's a million reasons. You will always find a reason to stop something. The hard part is ignoring that and keep going. And while not everything needs to be a grand tale, I would like to see more effort, and I'm in full agreement with him that occasionally it's nice to see a well told story, even if it's a music video. A music video, which is very common in this community, can tell a good story from start to finish. Well, that's my thoughts on it. This was an excellent video. I will leave a link to this in the description, and I'll also leave a link to the podcast if you want to see more of us doing things together and giving each other a hard time. I'm Rhino Rocks, in this case Rhino Yaps, and I will catch you all later.